The officer we know today was shot in the chest when a man who was being detained produced a weapon during a search. That's the information we have so far. Scotland Yard said a 23-year-old who'd already been arrested was detained at the scene and is in hospital with critical injuries. It's against this grim backdrop, in a piece of timing that you could never make up, that this Sunday marks National Police Memorial Day. This is where families and members of the public can pay tribute to fallen officers. And this year, because of events, there is a virtual service. We'll talk to Samantha Dixon in just a little bit, whose husband, James Dixon, known as Dixie, was killed on duty back in 2017. Firstly, John Apter, National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales, can tell us a little bit more about this. Afternoon to you, John. These are difficult times, I know, for you and your colleagues, but it is fitting that this is happening on Sunday, and against coronavirus and so many things being cancelled, the fact that it could go ahead even virtually.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yes, and what a day to talk about National Memorial Day, where we come together, not only as a policing family, but the families of those colleagues we've lost and the wider public, to remember the sacrifice that so many of our colleagues have made over the years. And yes, you're right. In normal times, we would come together. It should have been held at Lincoln Cathedral this Sunday, but because of the current pandemic, we've had to do things differently. So it's an online service, and we've done all we can to make it as fitting and as special as it can be. And I really hope on Sunday at 3 p.m. when the service goes out virtually, that everybody, even more people than would have normally, will get involved in the service and just remember those colleagues who we've lost. Yeah,
I mean, I said at the beginning, John, look, you guys know when you join the police that it's a risky job, that all manner of things might happen. None of that makes it any easier when it does. And I know, because we've talked often about this. I've been to those Police Bravery Awards for many years and seen the kind of incidents that your colleagues are involved with. So to have a tribute in this way is, it's a huge thing to do. It's an incredibly appropriate thing to do. But it does, for those who'll be looking at this for the first time on Sunday, it will really hammer home, I would imagine, to lots of people, the nature of the job you and your colleagues do.
It will, and I think sometimes with policing, especially when you see some of the negative headlines, and I'm a police officer, Ian, and I speak to my colleagues daily, and sometimes we've almost got our heads in our hands saying we're trying as hard as we can in the most difficult of circumstances, but sometimes for some we can never get it right. We are damned if we do, damned if we don't. But I think on events like the National Police Memorial Day, and I've been reading some of the tributes that have been put on the virtual tribute wall, and it's really heartening because we know, despite those headlines that dominate, we know that the vast majority of the public support their police, and it matters. It matters to me, it matters to my colleagues, it matters to police officers' families and loved ones, that the public are there for them, because it is an incredibly tough job. And as we've seen from today, it's an incredibly dangerous job. And nothing is more fitting for this Sunday that we remember all those colleagues that we've lost, and the public join us in that.
Indeed, and this is online via the sort of Follow the Federation website. Would that be the way to get there?
If you go to the Police Federation of England Wales website or the National Police Memorial Day website, it'll be all over social media. I think every police service in the country is going to be holding some sort of service virtually, or if they can get a small gathering at their forces on Sunday or maybe even on Monday. But it will be all over the place. So just stick a search in the old Google engine, or other ones are available, and I'm sure the public will be able to join us. But my plea to them is, this really matters. It's an important day, an important event. So I would love to see as many members of the public get involved and just take a moment to pause and reflect of the ultimate sacrifice that their police officers, because that's who we are their police officers, that they've made.
John, thank you. And thank you for taking time to talk to us on a really challenging day as well, and do pass on our thoughts to your colleagues there as well. I notice the flags are at half-mast at Federation H quarters in Leatherhead to John Apter there, who's the national chair of the Police Federation for England and Wales. Let's speak with Samantha Dixon. Her husband, PC James Dixie Dixon, was killed on duty back in December 2017. Samantha, afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. So Dixie was a motorcycle cop, right?
Yeah, he was. He loved motorbikes. He loved police officers. So when the surveillance job came up, it was made for him almost.
And I mean, I should say many people might know him because, of course, he was also on the side a bit of a TV star, wasn't he? Your man.
So he would tell me, yes. Yeah, he's probably better known as Dixie from Road Wars. In my opinion, the better half of Dixie and Yorkie from Road Wars. But I'm also still very good friends with Yorkie.
I'm glad to hear that. I would watch that programme relentlessly. I absolutely loved it. And Dixie was a standout officer. This is, for those who don't know, this is kind of quite early fly on the wall stuff, following around various cops, Thames Valley police officers, and essentially following them on duty. It's sort of a trailblazer, really, for many of those kind of shows that followed. But it was absolutely huge, and of course, it did show some of the problems and difficulties the police have to deal with, sometimes the humorous side of things. But again, it comes back to what we were just saying. And although Dixie was killed in an accident, this all ties in with the kind of risk and challenges that police officers take on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And I'm actually a serving officer myself as well. So, and still am. I've gone back to work part-time, but still back to work. So I know those firsthand, and the news overnight has hit me twofold. One, as a colleague, and two, knowing full well firsthand what that family are going through.
Of course. It's a job like no other, isn't it? I know every profession. I think my job's a bit like no other in some respects. But when I do some work with the police and chairing the the Federation conference and having gone to those bravery awards, and I'm utterly in awe. I feel quite insignificant sometimes when I'm listening to police officers talk about their typical day. My typical day, coming into work, having scampi and chips and thinking about what I'm going to go a bit gobby about on the radio. Your average day, and as we've seen from what has happened this morning, can turn out very differently from the one you thought you might have when you left for work.
Absolutely. And all police officers go to work knowing the risks, but it's actually part of what draws us to the job, the different things we can come across every day, the making a difference to people, the protecting people, and we are the ones that run to danger and not away from it. And I suppose that's what makes it very different. But I'm sure if you ask any police officer, they wouldn't tell you that they were anything special. They are simply doing their job.
In terms of Dixie, I mean, just what sort of police officer was he?
Brilliant, by all accounts. I didn't work that closely with him actually at work. We met on a first aid course, and we did meet at work. And at the time, we were both on what was then traffic, now roads policing. But after he was killed, the messages that I received just from random members of the public saying how they watched him on Road Wars, and several saying how he came across so well and was such a great cop that they joined off the back of watching him. And obviously our friends that worked with him all speak about his professionalism, his love for the job, his love to make sure that he was doing right as well. And although I didn't work closely with him, that was always what he talked about at home, and that's just how he was. It's hard to describe someone when you've not met them, but he was just brilliant.
And we all know that when you've lost somebody, you you don't get over it. You find ways of learning to live with it. But I mean, if you could have had a legacy, then it didn't come much more beautiful than the birth of your son, which was 3 months after James died.
Yes, indeed. And albeit it's tinged with sadness, the nature versus nurture aspect of parenthood that I'm involved in is amazing. You know, our son never met his dad, but oh my goodness, does he have some qualities of his father that are just uncanny. Yes. I obviously named him with his father in mind, so he's Parker Cameron James Dixon, so his initials read PC James Dixon.
Nice.
And I will forever tell him proudly that's what those initials mean, and he can use them as he grows older, or he can't. It's a subtle way of allowing him to remember his dad.
Yeah. And also a mechanism for getting a grown man like me to burst into tears watching the latest video of your little boy looking at the photo of his dad.
Yes, and that absolutely wasn't staged. That was the first cut, so to speak.
Really?
I'm very open with Parker, even at his mere 2.5 years of age. We have photos in our house of his dad.
Sure.
You know, I talk about him. He deserves to know who he was, and although there's this gaping gap where he should be stood, I want him to be able to talk openly and ask openly questions, albeit some might make me quite sad.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to be a taboo subject, because I think long term that might be more detrimental to Parker than if he can openly talk about it. And, you know, only the other day we were in the car and a motorbike came past and he went, "Mummy, it's Daddy."
Oh,
and
bless him.
Albeit that puts a spike through my heart.
Of course it does.
It's nice that he also almost associates it, so he does know. He's not of an age yet where he understands
what has
the
fully
fact
happened.
He's not here.
Of course. No, that was a rather moving video of little Parker looking at the photo, talking about who he was looking at. It was wonderful. And just a final point, Sam, I mean, this Sunday, the memorial commemorations, I mean, it's the timing is incredible based on what has happened this morning in that respect. But this will be to remember lots of officers who've died in a number of ways, but all while on duty, of course.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as today shows, it's not a case of if we add more names, it's when we add more names.
Sure.
That's the sad reality of the life of a police officer and the family they leave behind. But for me, the National Police Memorial Day is a day for which I can remember Dixie with pride and an overwhelming sense of the achievement that he made as a police officer, rather than the daily sadness that his memory sometimes brings. And I hope that that's what it does for other officers' families, because it's difficult to explain, I suppose, but when your loved one dies in the line of duty, albeit in a road traffic collision or in, you know, a criminal act, there are additional layers of grief that cannot be explained, and it makes what almost should be a private thing quite public, or very public. And the officer last night, his family are now going to have to consider, you know, funerals. Should it be a police funeral? Should it be a private funeral? The police policies that come with that, the investigation that comes with that already there is some criticism, wrongly potentially, that the officer might have not searched properly, and you wouldn't get that in normal levels. So when you go to something like the Police Memorial Day, or go virtually this year as it is, you've got others that absolutely fully understand those additional layers that nobody else does. Absolutely.
Sam, it's lovely to have you on. Thank you. We really appreciate that. Big hugs to your little boy as well. Thank you, Samantha Dixon, whose husband, PC James Dixie Dixon, was killed on duty in December 2017. He was a police motorcycle officer. He collided with a car at Hare Hatch and died at the scene, and he will be one of those remembered. Of course, National Police Memorial Day. I should say that if you would like to post a message on the tribute wall or view the memorial, go to all the W's, nationalpolicememorialday.org. That's nationalpolicememorialday.org, and you can leave a tribute there or just look at the memorial wall and see for yourself.